What's up? All right. Everyone, every person has a story. Every story begins with a why. Welcome to Whyus. I'm Ely, and together we'll explore the people, moments, and lessons that shape our lives. But before we talk about anyone else's story, I think it's only fair that I share mine. Previously, we have a lot of guests coming on, so moving forward, I think my partner and I, it's only fitting that you guys get to know who we are. So, who is Ely? Now, let's talk about it. Yeah, yeah, the camera phone. Oh, I gotta move up. This? How do I do that? Yeah, I swipe down. This is, ain't this some shit? No, I wanna get this. Oh, portrait orientation lock off. That's it? That was been off. So it's not like this? No, I know what you're trying to do. Yeah, we're gonna have to figure this out. People were like, look at these two. Bluetooth personal hotspot. Uh, did it move? No? Landscape? No. I hear me talking to myself, but it's really you. This good? Nah. Take two. The hell? Who is Ely? My story and why I started YUS. Now, every person has a story. Every story begins with a why. Welcome to YUS. I'm Ely. And together we'll explore the people, moments, and lessons that shape our lives. But before we talk about anyone else's story, I think it's only fair that I share mine. We've invited people to come on our show in the past. We heard their stories, small business owners, content creators, um, and you know what I'm talking about. But now it's time to share my story so you guys know who you're going to be talking with. So let's talk about it. The girl from San Francisco. A lot of you who know me know that I'm from San Francisco. The younger part of my life, from being raised out there all the way till 18 when we moved to American Samoa. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that girl from San Francisco, and then later on down the road, I'll talk about American Samoa and everything. Growing up in San Francisco was a great experience. It 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 was rough but good, and that's where we got to be around all the family, got to make great friends, go to school and meet some friends. And I still have friends from San Francisco that I grew up with. um, but I want to focus on where as a family where we grew up, because growing up we moved a lot around the city. I'm not going to talk about outside of San Francisco, but within the city itself. For example, I can remember all the way back when we lived in South City in the small apartments. I don't know the name of the apartments. And then I remember my parents moving us to Presida, where we went to King's Church. Presida was that greenhouse that had the park right across. I'm sure the park is still there, but we lived in Presida. And we also live on Mission Street, 16th and Mission Street, I think. But that's where one of our uncles lived. We also lived Folsom, um, and then from Folsom, we lived on Van Dyke Street, Third and Van Dyke. You guys remember the TikTok shop? We used to be able to walk to TikTok because a lot of my family members, including my mother and my oldest sister, worked at TikTok. If you know about TikTok, then you know. And then from Van Dyke, we were back and forth to certain areas. But I remember us and our auntie who actually owned that place or rented was Antingalo. That's where we moved from Van Dyke to Cortland on Bernal Heights. Cortland and Bank Street. Etingalo and her family lived on the second floor. It had three levels. If you know Cortland and the houses in San Francisco, they're built weird, but that's what we grew up with. All the houses are together. But this house, the third floor, the second floor is where Etingalo and Uncle Clarence lived. And then at the bottom was my dad, my mom, and us kids. So when you on Banks in Cortland, you walk down the hill, and our front window was the sidewalk. It was hella weird because that it was built weird, but hey, that's where we live. So from Cortland, that's when we moved into Hunters Point, 24 in Harbor Road. That was our first address, and I was in middle school, and we moved there. Um, and then, of course, later on down our high school years, lived within Hunters Point, but we lived on 752 Kirkwood. Still remember those addresses because that means a lot to me. Um, we were raised by our single mom. Tea Wellingtone. She worked really hard, and I'll talk more about it down the road. And my parents divorced at a very young age. My mother passed away in 21. I took care of my mom, and my dad is still here with us. And I'm very blessed to have my father still with us. Um, my older sister was raised with my grandparents, but she would always be with us in the city or wherever where we be. She was always there with us. So we knew we had an older sister, but she was raised by her grandparents in Manua. And then it was just the three of us, my mom and dad's kids, because that's my dad's first marriage. Um, it was Father Tonu, then myself, then Elizabeth, and then Sotolasi. So mom was raising three of us in the ghetto, Harbor Road to Kirkwood. So you guys all know about that. And at one point in our lives growing up, we also lived in Sunnydale, but wasn't too long. But the constant moving and the financial challenges was huge, and I've seen it with my mom, and with my dad too, and then with having family members coming in and out of uh of our household, and just being raised with all my first cousins, which was such a blessing. And I'll talk more about that down the road. But, you know, we had to figure out how to survive out there. And hearing gunshots and witnessing crime it was a normal part of life. I'll cover more about that, but it seemed like we were numb to it because that's all we knew and grew up on. So it was like, you know, nothing to us. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion on it. And I know my siblings could attest to it. But hearing gunshots like every now and then in the hood, it was nothing. Uh, Seeing violence, I mean, it was something, but it was crazy just witnessing those everyday things. The drug dealings, the beating up, people beating up, you know, um, violence. But we knew how to mind our own businesses and just kept on moving. And I mean, it was a life. You never realize it until you actually move out the city and just appreciate everything that you grew up with. Um, so it was to me. I had a great life. A lot of you may be hearing a little bit about this, but like, damn, you grew up in the ghetto, and it's like I'm proud from being the ghetto. Um, but it taught me a lot of lessons, and especially from mom. So that's what I want to get into right now is, lessons from my mom. My mom had to work a lot providing for us kids. She had to work hard. Mind you, she she worked at the blood bank, and then but the work I remember her doing before she got into the social service part is she worked for TikTok, and that's what I was mentioning early. We used to walk down from Van Dyke and Third and go pick up dinner because she was working there. My aunties were working there. My dad, those are all my dad's sisters, and my dad's auntie that worked there. And I had older cousins that worked there. Then I had my oldest sister work there at one point. But TikTok was the spot. TikTok provided for us when we were growing up. So after evening prayers, we would walk our butts down there, even though it's late, but we're so used to it. So I mean, but from there, mom looked for other jobs. That's where she became a Head Start teacher out in Hunters Point. A lot of you probably know her. She was a family service worker at Geneva Towers, and then from the Geneva Towers, she was a family service worker in Middle Point. Now that's another part of HP near West Point. So mom headquarters was Geneva Park, which is no longer. I mean Geneva Towers, which is no longer there, and straight to Middle Point. And some of my cousins were there. And the whole thing with mom was she was heavily involved within the community. She knew the people in the sheriff's department. She knew the people in the housing authority's office. I mean, her main job was to help the children, in need, especially to get the families into the housing. So mom was a contact person back in the days, um, to to help people get into these housings. So it's a project. It could have been Sunnydale, Alameda, Potrero Hill, Hunters Point, and in all the housings. But majority of them lived in Sunnydale and Hunters Point. But that was mom's work before we moved to Samoa. Um, she helped she helped raise my cousins. Um, Before we get to that, uh, it was me at the time being the oldest. Um, Mind you, I'm still in middle school and then going into high school, and I had to. What do you want to? How you want to say this? Grow up quick. I had to mature real quick. Even though me and my sister were just a year apart and my brother was 4 years apart, but I felt that not knowing as a responsibility or the leadership role, whatever, but I just felt the need to grow up and to help my mom raise my siblings. I saw the struggle that my mom went through, so to help her out with my younger siblings, I had to like get stuff in order at home. By doing that, it's cleaning, learning how to cook. So learning how to cook at a young age, started off with cooking rice, using the pot instead of the rice cooker. Um, I learned that in fourth grade. This was in that like second thing to learn how to cook was eggs. If you know how to cook eggs, you first start off with that. So, and then just learning how to navigate within our home so I can help out my mom because when my mom gets home, she's exhausted. And at the time I didn't know what it was, but she was mentally exhausted being a single mom and just raising us kids. Mom never bought any new clothes. She always ensured that me and my siblings had, at least up to date clothing. Even though at the time, sometimes you got to go to Kmart, buy some, low cost stuff, pay less. And people used to tease people like us who wore Pro Wings. And here we are, got people wearing, Nikes, Cortez, Adidas, and all that. But my mom did her best to provide for us, provide for my younger siblings. So it just takes me a while to think back and evaluate, to appreciate everything that mom is doing. And back to taking care of our cousins. My mom had a real great relationship with my dad's sisters and my dad's parents. People used to try to talk, well, they did talk down about my mom always extending an open arm to my dad's relatives. They were telling her, they think I didn't hear, but I would hear these conversations like, why would you even accept, you know, this and that? My mom's like, these are my kids' family. I'm going to do what I need to do. But because of that, I was very close to my first cousins. I am still close to my first cousin to this day because of what my mom has done for us and treating my cousins as if they were her own kids. But she was more nicer to them than us. um, my mom used to, and my mom, yeah. And and seeing that, hearing people talk about that, my mom, um, growing up, I used to think that was a normal thing. And then when I got older, I wasn't feeling it too much because I start asking myself questions like, why is my mom doing this? Um, when I, as me as a teenager, I used to be upset with my mom, like, why are you doing this? Why are you taking folks in? I was being selfish. But my mom always, she said, this is your blessings in the future. Um, what I do right now is going to matter in the future. I still didn't understand that at the time. That's why, like at one point when I came home and I saw all my cousins there, and my mom had my aunties and uncles there, and I'm like, why are you coming home and doing this? Um, I don't want to talk too much about that, because I wanna keep it where what I've learned from this and not trying to bring out the negative part. And I know some of y'all might, if y'all want to hear it, yeah. But but that's where I learned that, loving on one another, regardless of the situations you are currently in. I look back to my experience with my mom taking care of extended family, um, learning the value of sacrifice and the service being given to, whether you like it or not, but it's the right thing to do. The uncomfortable, doing the uncomfortable, knowing that people are talking down about you. That's what my mom was going through. People will talk a lot of smack about her, and a lot of folks thinks I didn't hear it, but I heard it. I heard it from people in the community. I heard it from people within our own family, and I heard it from friends, my own friends. But my mom, she blocked all that noise out, and just continued to do what she felt, was good for our family. And my mom ain't perfect. My mom, my mom was my mom, and those of you who know her, she was a heavy hitter with us kids. When I say heavy hitter, she disciplined us. And those of you know, when we're going to church, growing up in church, you got that typical mom. And my mom was that typical mom. We were in the alto section. She had the sopranos in the back, tap us on the shoulder. And as soon as you get that tap on the shoulder, I'm like, shit. I turn quick, slowly around, and my mom's right there with the fist. She's basically saying, wait till after church, I'm about to beat your ass. My mom was like that. When we do for hours for the kongai and stuff, and if we come out representing Rob, me and my sister, she yells at us. In front of everybody, she did not care. And that was my mom' way of disciplining. She was straightforward, direct, and I couldn't stand it. I didn't like it. But now that I'm an adult, I look back, I was like, valuable lessons. So yes, so my mom used to go off on us verbally, and those verbal those verbal discipline is brutal. She used to look at us and be like, if in Samoan it sounds funny, but I don't want to butcher, but she'll say things like, and I know a lot of you say, if I were to train a dog, they'll be smarter than you. So I guess in Samoan, uh Alpha Kongu Mele Poko, I don't know. My Samoan, Sili Akun Fa Kongu Mele Poko, Sili Akun Poko Mele Oko, I was like, oh, damn. You know, I don't lie, I heard not only my mom say, I heard a lot of parents say that, but my mom used to discipline us in front of people. And I taught my cousins, they get it too, but it's just the funniest thing when you think back. And I swear, I love my mom. And she used to say things, that just cracks us up now. And then but that's one of the examples that my mom, or she'll come and just slap us. If she'll just walk up to us, scold us, about got in the sewer wrong, and then she'll just come and just slap us across the face, and we just move on like nothing happened because we still trying to look cool in front of our friends and the church members. That slap. Get that slap. Yep, I get that slap, and we just look and be like, "Psh," wipe it off and keep on walking, keep on moving. And then we get teased by our friends, like, you mowed it. They be like, you hella mowed it. And I'm like, man, shut the hell up. So my mom was known for that type of thing. My mom also, growing up, even though she was like very hard at discipline, but she still treated my friends and my cousins, really good. So they remember all that stuff. For instance, my mom used to sneak us when they had the theaters. My mom used to sneak us in the trunk. So my cousins can attest to this because my mom just shove all them little ones in the trunk and just leave it halfway open. And it's just the three of us, and she only pays for her and two of us that's in the front. But all the little baby ones are in the back in the trunk. And as soon as we park and get out, then that's when everybody comes out and get into the front and we just watch a movie from there. That's how my mom take care of us. Um, and for my friends in high school and middle school, she will come and support all our games, and she'll drop them off there. But and she'll also discipline us in front, of our friends. So just imagine, you get embarrassed, but then you also get love in the same time. My mom was our biggest cheerleader, especially me, because I was heavily into sports. I played sports from sixth grade all the way to high school into college, and I remember my mom, as much as she was busy with work and trying to get that money, but she would always make that availability to come watch, our my games, and I can hear her cheering, from the bleachers. She was always at the softball game because it was outdoors, but the basketball and volleyball, she didn't all come in, but it was softball because she would just park in and then come to the games and so forth. So with all that, watching mom help others despite having little herself, um, it's refreshing to think back about that, and that gives me now the family first mentality, taking care of each other. Mom would always instill in that, even though she didn't know she was doing that at the moment, but that's exactly what was going on, what was happening. So my mom was a discipliner and so forth. um, yep. And leadership starts with serving others. That's the lesson I learned from my mom. Um, now that I look back into it, and then finding my voice, leaving home and gaining independence. I couldn't wait to leave home. But when I turned 18, I went to City College. I played softball. But that's the only thing I did. I failed all my classes in City College. My mom didn't know that. If she were alive, she would know now. Now my dad's gonna know. I was what you call a softball bum. All I wanted to do was play softball, play cricket, and that's all I did in San Francisco. I did not want to go to work. I didn't even want to go to school. So I failed all my classes. Um, where I wanted to just go and have fun. I didn't want to have any responsibilities, but it while my mom is still working, while my mom is still going, making that money for us. And mind you, I'm already 18, graduate from high school, but here I am, not even again thinking about my mom. But what I did was I taught myself driving, so every morning, I would start the car. This was from middle school all the way to high school. I'll just move the car back and forth, back. I mean, my mom's poor car had all these scratches because I kept just practicing driving. And then eventually, um, after high school, I took the responsibility from my mom by taking my cousins to school and my younger siblings to school. So I would pick up the young ones, taking them to Paul Revere, then take them to Burbank, and then take my brother and sister to Wilson. At this time, my sister was a senior and my brother was a freshman. And so I did that for a little bit. This, mind you, I graduated in June of '93, and then into '94, I went to City College. I was just playing softball and doing nothing with my life. Failed all my damn classes, and I didn't even care at that moment. Next thing you know, we get a knock on the door. Um, I didn't know who this man was. This man just knocked on the door. I opened the door. It was a man with a hat with bright ass colors like windbreakers and a fanny pack. And he had shades. And all he said when he opened the door, he said, Fepia. And I looked, I was like, who the hell are you? And he's like, Filipino. I said, Mom, there's a man here asking for you. My mom pops in and she just ran and hugged him and gave him a big old hug. Oi, Kalafai. It was her brother, my uncle Alofa. He flew from Samoa and came and looked for my mom, found us in Hunters Point. That was the last place we lived, 752 Kirkwood, and told my mom that he needs her help. She needs to come home and help him take care of my grandparents. Because one of our aunties was moving to the States and he needs his sister's help, which is my mom. So a week passed by. I didn't even know that conversation took place. I knew afterwards. I got back from Sacramento, played in the tournament, the softball tournament, and I walk into the house. My mom looked at me. I opened the door. She said, next week, no, she said, go pack your bags because next week, you and your sister, you guys are going to Samoa. We're all moving to Samoa. I was like, okay, cool. Mind you, I didn't care what was going on. I'm not gonna talk about my sister's story. She'll be the one to talk about that story. But she was not happy moving to Samoa. Um, she had her own challenges, but that's her story to tell, not mine. But me, I couldn't wait to leave the house. I couldn't wait to leave San Francisco. I was like, good, Lord be gone. Because I did not want no responsibility. I just wanted to go and just go to the islands and just be a, lazy person. So that's how we ended up in American Samoa. October 2nd, my sister Victoria, Faletona Victoria's birthday, is the day we flew to American Samoa. And my grandparents, the Ku'ua Lepusa, they were waiting for us at the airport, picked us up, went to Uncle Sal's house in Pavaiai. The very next day, the first flight out, we were in Ta'umanua, the most at the time we used to think it's the most isolated place on the islands, and I loved it, and it enabled me to reconnect with the culture, and I think it really helped me with my identity as an individual, as a Samoan, and to appreciate where I come from, my name, because my government name, the name that was given to me, is the name I take pride in right now, is, Le'ipusa Suimanua. And Ili is, it's not even on my birth certificate, but that's my calling name throughout the whole time. So this whole time I thought Ili was on the birth certificate, but my mom had them calling me Ili because there's a thing about my name, Le'ipusa Suimanua. Um, but that's where I started learning more and more about myself. And plus, I was blessed enough to be with my grandparents because my grandmother is Lepusa, was Lepusa Tui Manua. And I'm very proud of that name. And um, people had a hard time pronouncing that name growing up, but I'm very grateful for that name. So a lot of people was having troubles with identities and all that. I know I struggled with it for a bit, but now it's like it's a no-brainer because I thank God for that move to American Samoa, that I was able to find my Manua self. And that's where also I learned about a whole bunch about the Manua people. My both my parents are from Ta'u, and of course my mom's dad's from Moka'a, Apia, but are from the Molinga Welingongi family, and very proud of it. Um, so from there, it's just from there, and then I only spent from October to January of '95. That's when my grandparents basically told us we need to go continue our college education. Mind you, I was not trying to go to school or anything. I told my grandparents I want to stay here and take care of them because I just want to be a beach bum, because it was nice waking up, even though there's a lot of hours, but you have to do all your hours before the sun comes out. You wake up early, do the hours. I was fine with that. Woke up, did my grandparents' breakfast, and then you rest during the afternoon because the sun was burning. You know, uh, a kid for me at the time was coming out there. It was hot as hell, and the sun was crazy. And then when when it's starting to go down, you do all your hours in the evening. You I had to cook for my grandparents, and then the sa the when they got the sa, people do prayers and so forth. I wanted to do that for the rest of my life because my grandparents' house was right by the cricket field and the basketball court, and where the village played volleyball. I didn't want to do anything else. I just want to do that. So I go talk to my grandparents. I say, Grandma, Grandpa, I want to stay here and take care of you guys. My grandpa looked at me and he said, he said, "Okay, anulaw nga." I was like, ah, damn. I said, okay. And even that same, you were talking to my grandma. I said, Grandma, I said, Fiacaso Malu. And she looked at me and she's like, Kay Vivi, kile no se pao pao. I was like, damn, okay. So, that's why to this day, I don't even want to call Malu because I don't want to, because like my grandma said, I don't know shit. So, I know a little, but yeah, okay. So I don't have a Malu and I went to school because my grandpa said, take your ass to school. And so I thank God for that he forced me to go to school. So me and my sister, we left in January and then we enrolled at ASCC. And that's when we stayed with uh, my mom's family, and then we stayed with my dad's family while we were out there at ASCC, um, where we have me and my sister, where we have a friendship that have lasted over 30 years with a group of girls, and we were called the girls back in American Samoa College. We're all ladies now, we're half a centennial old, but we were always known as the girls, and we are still friends to this day, so I'm very grateful for that. And with all that, learning who I was, learning who you were outside of family responsibilities was a great deal. It was it was an everyday thing. You go through your ups and downs. You see what your own siblings are going through. You see what your younger cousins are going through. You see what your aunties, uncles, and your friends. And just learning who I was outside of the family responsibilities, and then discovering confidence. Like I said, in San Francisco, we were moving from place to place. It was like that in American Samoa. Nothing was different, so it was normal. We were moving from one family house to another. We didn't have a set house. We didn't have anywhere that, you know, Peal or Coelho's kids were stationed at. So we were moving from our grandparents' house, and then we moved to my mom's brother's house. And then my mom, even at the point, rented a house that her brother came and stayed with us. And then we moved to our auntie Luma and Uncle Fatu in Fangaima. Um, and then my sister and brother moved with our other auntie in Ili Ili. Eventually, we moved with my dad and his wife in Leone. And that's where I last stayed before we moved. But a lot of us always came back to Fangaima, where we always stayed with Auntie Luma. And, that was like the place to be because it was right there. In the middle of everything, right by the airport, easy to get on the bus. And we always loved going there because we were like free children. But, auntie and uncle were always busy doing their thing, but we were there. I was there with my younger cousins. So that's where the beginning of, voicing to believe that my voice mattered because moving everywhere, I got tired of it. And I even talked to my dad a little bit. I even talked to my mom about it. I asked them, I was like, why don't we have a place that we could call our own, instead of going from here and here. I'm very appreciative. We also live with our uncle who was an instructor or professor, whatever you want to call that. He was a retired Marine, and we live with him. I was always grateful for all my family members who took my mom's kids in. I will always remember that. But I always have questions too. Like when I asked my mom and dad, how come we don't have our own place? Why? Why are we moving from here to here? I started asking these questions, and then, not knowing, like now when I look back, it's like you're starting to ask questions, you know. Um, Yeah, and I had a conversation with my mom where you know how it's hard to talk to your parents and voice your opinion because you know we were just I think we were just taught, just this is my family I'm talking about, that when the adults speak, your parents, you know, you just listen, you just do as you're told, and you know you have no voice in the matter of whatever's going on. But I remember having a conversation with my mom in Hunters Point before we left. I said, Mom, you know, it seems like you don't want to hear us. You just yell at us. You just tell us what you want us to do. And then especially I was sticking up for my younger sister, my sister, and I was like, she's going through some stuff, and you know, every time she tries to talk, you know, you just yell at her or yell at me, yell at my brother, and then you know, always voice is always raised. And I said, Mom, you got to hear us. You know, you got to hear what we're going through. So, so I'm gonna tell a little story about how I used my voice and I took advantage of my dad. And my mom knew, because you know my dad was hardly around, but he was around when you know when times matters here and there. So in the eighth grade, me, my siblings, my sisters, and some of my friends, not gonna name their name, we decided that it was a great idea to get on the bus and go to Stonestown and Gaffle, steal some Guess overalls. You remember how Guess overalls was the shit back then? We thought it was the best idea. Mind you, it was my birthday. So I was like, oh, cool, let's go. Let's go to Stonestown. We went to Stonestown. I got what I needed. I had a bag full of Guess overalls, Guess jeans, ready to go. I walked out, and then one of my cousins, she was like, "Hey, Popo, you know, there's the police, and someone is." You know, she said my friend's name. She's still in there. I was like, "Fuck!" So I had to go back in and tell her, "Hurry up, get her ass out." And then when she looked at me, I was like, "Come on, let's go." And then I noticed two guys, a woman, a man, a woman, looking at us. I was like, "Fuck." I said, let's go, let's get out of here. So we start booking, and I still have my bag with me, mind you. So me and my friend, we start running, and the only way out was I ran right out of the parking lot. And I knew it was done right there because it wasn't the doors out to the main mall where I can just, you know, jet out, go to the bus stop and do something. Me and my friend ran straight into the damn parking lot. I just dropped the bag, put my hands up. I was like, I guess I'm caught. I'm done. They took us in, and of course, you know, they took my picture and they scolded, basically saying, you know, that you can't come here any longer. As a matter of fact, your picture will be posted all over Nordstrom. You cannot shop in any Nordstrom within this city. I was like, okay, whatever." Then they call my auntie at home. This is we're in Cortland. Of course, my auntie calls my dad, and then no, she lived in Cortland, and now we're living in Harbor Road. I get home and I'm asleep. The next day, my dad comes over, and he's sitting in the living room with a big old. You remember those extension cords? Oh, they still have the orange extension cord. And my dad's sitting there, and he's just looking at me. He calls me, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, "Ah, shit, he's about to beat my ass with the cord." So I'm thinking, "Ooh, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna get out of this?" My dad starts talking, and when he asked the question, "Why did you do this?" I started crying. I started crying. I said, "Because you have no money. You always tell me you have no money. You can't buy me stuff." So I went and stole it myself. I played the victim. My poor dad. I played the victim, and and I just went on. Then my dad started crying. He was like, "Oh, Carlos, faz you finger, you know, blah blah." Then he just came and hugged me. I didn't get a whooping with that cord. So I'm known from my siblings is like I I would say I manipulated my poor dad because you know I took advantage of the situation at the time, and I did use the excuse. There's no money because there's somewhat truth where if there's no money they say no, you know. But I took it to the next level where I decided to go steal what I wanted. But that was the last time I stole anything, and I was in the eighth grade. So it was a scary moment, but the way I got my dad to believe in it, that I blame it on him and I blame it on my mom, say that, they're always broke. So I went and stole it myself. So yeah, that's a little thing I wanted. So, I found my voice then, but I used it in the wrong way. I'm not encouraging this, but I just wanted to tell the story where, when I think back about it, I was like, your voice is important. Your voice does matter. And me having that conversation with my mom really helped out because as life progressed with our my mom and my siblings, my mom got better at listening and my mom got better at asking us questions. And I saw that change in my mom in Samoa. So yeah, it's developing your voice and beginning to believe that your voice mattered, developing leadership skills without realizing it. That was me. That was me, not even knowing. So again, the moral of this story is before you can lead others, you must first discover who you are. Who are you? So I just think back and, I just want to share that part with you guys. And then looking back, all those experiences were preparing me for something I never expected, a career, get this, dedicated to helping others. How that? How's that? A life of service. Who would have thought that would be me, helping out others, helping out people that I didn't know, helping out family members. I mean, yeah. And that's where I started when I left Samoa. Uh, I went to college, got my little 4-year degree, my little paper, all happy and all that. I was the first to graduate from college on both sides, I believe. But if some of my cousins watching this, if I'm wrong, say so. Um, Again, I didn't want to go to college, but I remember one of my cousins coming up to me. What This is what made me go to college and finish. First was, of course, my mom because she always instilled school in our brains. Um, but what really motivated me to go and finish is because one of my cousins came up to me and said, "My mom," this is what he said. "My mom said you're not going to graduate from college." I looked. I said, "Okay, watch me." That's all I said. Walked away. I mean, it wasn't pretty the 4 years in college, but my main goal was to prove my auntie, whoever said that, wrong. And I wanted to make my mom proud. I wanted to make my dad proud, and I wanted to be an example too for my siblings and to all my cousins because I know how that's a huge milestone for our family. But now I got cousins graduating from college with their bachelors, masters, and doctorates. So hats off to you guys. Um, Hence, after the degree, became a teacher in American Samoa, taught at South Pacific Academy, married my husband. Then we moved to back to not Frisco, to Seattle because of one of my best friends. Um, Talked me into it. So she talked to me like 3 times, and I finally said, forget it. I'll just come out there. Where I entered the federal service. That's where I started my career back in 2002. I'm still in it. I'm about to be done. But that's a whole nother story, a different story for to you guys to talk about. Um, Started off as a correctional officer, but right now I do reentry work. Where it helped me just being in that field alone helped me learn discipline and accountability. Thought I learned it from my mom, my dad, and my family. But being in this work environment has a lot to deal with discipline and accountability because of the safety and the welfare of my peers and who we took care of at the time. Um, I became a recreation specialist in the field, reentry affairs coordinator, and helping people rebuild their lives and understanding second choices. So I'm very proud of what I'm doing right now, but I don't want to talk too much about that part because I'm still in the field. And so, because they might come after me with whatever I say on social media, because things are a little, rough within the work, the agency that I'm in. So the key lesson to this, the key thing that I want to just share, why I'm sharing this, is because everyone deserves dignity and an opportunity to succeed. It doesn't matter your background. It doesn't matter who you are and where you are in this day and age, where you are, where you're sitting right now. If you feel like you're not moving forward, if you feel like you fail, today's a new day. Get up and fail forward. When I say fail forward is learn from the failures that you went through and are going through and just move forward. Learn from your mistakes. Um, I had to learn that way, but my thing, the problem that I was having in the past was I keep making the same mistakes over and over again that I wasn't learning anything. And the only way that things start to change is when you learn from the mistakes and to do the opposite or do something different to make the matter, to make the situation better. So, like I said, if you wherever you are today, get up. It's a new day. Draw the line across that sand and just take the step over. Um, it's never too late. The only when it's too late is when you don't even make a move. You make that choice, just sit still. You make that choice to just think about things and not even want to move forward. So everyone deserves dignity and an opportunity to succeed. You deserve that opportunity. You too can succeed. I'm not saying I'm successful. I'm successful with the love that I have for my family, for my friends. Depends on how you define successful. But again, the choice lies within you, either to do good in life, do bad in life. It all comes down to one thing: your choice. But serving people wasn't enough. I eventually found myself speaking up for people who needed someone in their corner. Finding my purpose within the federal field that I'm in, um, where I became involved in the union. I heard about unions, but I didn't know what were unions actually until we I sat in the onboarding class where they had a unionist come and talked about it. They didn't have to sell me why join a union. I knew immediately that I needed to join it. That was just me personally, because I knew that that's where I can voice my opinion. I can bring up things that I want and then address situations. So all I knew is I had rights, and becoming a union member was a big deal for me. So no questions asked, I signed up immediately. I even got to the point where I told the union president at the time, I want to help out, in any way, shape, or form. And he just told me, it's like, get through your year, then I'll come back to you, and then, you can start helping. And that's what I did. Um, and then when they came to me, and my first experience in helping represent employees, hold on, let me go back to when I first started. Um, I got in trouble with work myself, and that's where I learned having a union rep was a was a good thing. I was only 6 months within the Bureau of Prisons, and my ass went out there and got a DUI. A DUI. I started the Bureau June 2nd, and November 16th, I got a DUI. And I thank God that, I was safe and all that. And then remember, in the meantime, I put in for a job to get a promotion. So when I got, pulled over, um, I was like, hell, great. I am done. I'm gonna get fired. I was like, I'm not even gonna get. I didn't even care about the promotion anymore because I just worried about keeping my job because I'm just 6 months in. But at the time, I didn't even take a union rep, but I knew that the union was there to help me. But I was so scared to even tell the union folks because I didn't want people knowing my business. So I went straight to the warden and I told her what happened. The warden scolded me. The warden cussed me out, and he pointed at his little glass that he had on the side, and it was like dark in his office. And he was just sitting there, and he looked at me after he cussed me out. He's like, "You see this?" And I was just like, "Yes, sir." He's like, "I can crack this open whenever I want, and I can leave the bureau." And then he went again off on me again. You start calling me a dumbass and all this stuff. I was like, "Oh shit." You just started the damn bureau. I hired you. There's something about you that I know you can do, potential and all that, but your dumbass went out and got a DUI, and I had to hear it all over again. He's like, you're just starting. People get fired. You want to get fired? And I was just like, no, sir. I had to suck it up. I'm like, no, sir. I'm just here to work. And so, he told me, get your ass out of the office, do better, and don't come back in my office. And mind you, I put in for the recreation job to get a promotion. I think like 3 weeks later, I get a call and I'm at home on my day off. It's a Monday. I remember this. And I answered the call, and the other voice said, Millie, Miss Millie. I was like, yes, who's this? He's like, this is Willie. And in good old Ely fashion, who the fuck is Willie? Oh man, this is the fucking warden. This is warden, blah, blah, blah. Da, da, da. Do you want the fucking job or what? I was like, sir, I'm so sorry. Yes, I want the job. He's like, show up to work. You got the fucking job. Hung up. I was like, oh shit. I started crying. I was so like embarrassed. I just started thanking God. I was just like, even though I'm not a good Christian and all, but all I know, I had to give thanks to God. I had to give thanks to God because my ass should have been fired. I should have been doing all this, but he gave me a second chance. Second chance. We talked about that earlier. So that's when I knew I believed in second chances and also start standing up in fairness because he was very fair with me. He gave me an opportunity. And he was those old school individuals that gave you a second chance. He scolded you, and I took it like a champ and just went forward. Um, I start learning our contract. I start learning labor relations. I start learning equal employment opportunity work. I start learning, all these things so I can represent myself, um, and then eventually represent others. Now, it's important that, I keep telling people that you need to learn and, your own rights, and you need to learn policies within your workplace. If you don't know the rules of your own workplace, it don't matter where you work. If you don't know the basics, and then when you're challenged or when you're questioned and when you start asking yourself, like, am I supposed to do this? You have to know. And for me at that time, I knew that I have to know my rights. I have to know what I'm supposed to do. I had to know my job description. So I read my position descriptions. I read all of that. So I know exactly what I am supposed to do. So when people, managers, or my coworkers try, they come and ask me questions, or they come and try to tell me to do something that is not man law or policies or whatever, I will know what I am capable, what I'm supposed to do. If it doesn't violate the law, if it doesn't violate the policy, then you know what? I'll do it. But it's important. It's important to know where you're at, what your work is about. And so that's where your voice matters. That's where I start finding my voice. That's where I knew the importance of reading. And you always hear that as a kid. Read, read, read. Remember those book reports you used to do? Well, shoot, I did my own book report when it comes to the contracts and the policies and my position description. I knew what I was supposed to do because I was responsible for me. So that's when I became a steward. I became heavily involved. They started appointing me to represent staff. I start representing departments. It got to the point where I got promoted to labor management relations. So I sat as a head as a chair at the point at the time to lead the labor management as a 3 year inside and within within my career. And then I start representing um, women's and fair practice. Where I do EEO. Um, Workers' comp, I did some of that too in my beginning stage. And eventually, I ran for a board position because, like I always believe, if you don't like what you see, then you either step up or just shut up. So what I did was I didn't like what was going on, or I felt like enough wasn't done. So instead of me complaining all the time, going to the meetings or going to the managers, whatever, and complain about, how come this is not done? This policy is this, and that. The only way you can fix it is run for a position and see if you can do a better job than someone else. If not, you can do a job where you can help those current people who are in the positions to help them do a better job. So I ran. My first position on the union executive board was the secretary, and from there I went from secretary, did chief steward, I did chief negotiations, did settlements, um, and then I became sergeant at arms. Eventually worked my way up. I became vice president, then I became president, and then I started repping at the national level where I did the Western District, and then the national where I oversaw what 11 states. So that's what I currently do. But I didn't rerun for that position that was held last month because I'm getting ready to do other things. And I'll talk about that later. But national leadership roles I've done and representing thousands of employees. This is all walks of life. This is all federal agencies. Um, so it's a wonderful thing to have a voice. It's a wonderful thing to know, you know. So yeah. Yeah. So right now, if you guys have any questions, it don't matter where you work at. You guys want help? You want advice to anything? Call me, hit me up, DM me, hit up Wyus, send us an email, you know, admin at wyus.com. Or is it, yeah, hit us up. I can help you with that. I ain't even gonna charge you because you can ask my sister and my cousins who call me and ask me for advice and some friends. I help them because it's to me it's just the right thing to do. As a unionist in a federal agency, we don't get paid to do this stuff. It is a collateral duty on top of the job that you do. So already we don't get paid. We just do it because we want to. So this is me telling you, if you need help, if you have an overzealous supervisor, if you don't know your rights about, workers' comp, some of them, the private sector, the I, whatever, I can help you. If I don't know the answers, we'll navigate it together because in this world age, you can find every information because of the internet. So I'm available to you guys. You guys need some help, even some negotiation tips. You guys need me to look over some documents, because words are important. The wording in the documents are important. What you put in writing is vital of what's going to be because it affects the outcome of a whole bunch of people that you don't even know it. So hit me up. Wyus is here to help you. I'm here because, like, my partner Kenny, when he was working for this corporation, he was talking to me about the safety conditions that they had at their office because they didn't have like a place where they can go get water. They had to walk break rooms, nothing. They had to walk. What? How long did they have to walk again? I think about 5 minutes, 10. Oh, it's 20 minutes. 20 minutes just to get to a place where they can use the restroom, a place where they can get water or access to vending machines to take a break. So by the time they go take their break, because they're taking all their time walking, the time is up. So why even walk? So And then what they were doing there, they were trying to start a union. And so I told my partner, my cousin, I was like, hey, instead of focusing on that, focus on solutions that, because, in the meantime, he was looking at getting a promotion, trying to move up. So the best way to attack that is not kissing ass. Everybody keeps saying, well, I don't want to kiss ass. It's not kissing ass, guys. Is learning how to navigate around a situation and how to provide a solution for a problem. And that's what I told my boy Kenny to focus on. I said, what is your issue? He told me the issues. I said, what can you do? Well, no, he gave me the issues, the real issues. He's like, "Cuz we gotta walk, certain amount of time just to go so we can use the restroom." And I said, "Okay, so how can we fix it? How can you resolve it? What would make your colleagues happy? Because I don't work there. You know the logistics of what's going on over there." I said, "Talk to me." So everything that he was talking to me, I said, "All right." I said, "That's kind of doable. A lot of the stuff you guys are asking for, it's nothing hard." So I told him, write it down, break it down side by side. Issues, solutions, and present it to your supervisor, whoever that needs to go to. Because the whole goal is do not complain. And you just complain. I'm not. This is what I teach to all my stewards, and so I was teaching my cousin. I was explaining to him like the whole point is yes, you have a concern. But if you just complain and complain and complain, people are going to just hear this and they're just going to tune you out. But if you identify the issues and then you come up with a solution for the issues and you present it and just talk to them, I mean, it's the best way of of communicating. It's how to communicate because a lot of people like to communicate, but they don't connect. And this is how you connect. You connect by identifying the issues and then bringing a solution. It's called problem solving. We all learned about problem solving growing up, but you have to connect. You have to connect by communicating what the issues are and providing the problems to whoever the party is you're communicating to. So, and, and what was awesome about it, Kenny presented it this, like let's say today, and within the same week, he received positive feedback and the managers heard him because they listened because of his communication and they were able to get a lot what they asked for. What he asked for, he put it in writing and he presented it to his supervisor. That was it. And they had questions, they asked him, and he had a follow up for everything. You can't get everything you ask for. If you can get a few, win. If you can get one, win win. And you keep going back and asking, continue. If you need help, Wiles is here to help you. So sometimes, sometimes your purpose finds you before you find it. Who would have thought that this would have been my thing? I never thought about it. Now through all those years, one thing became clear: everyone has a story. You have a story. I have a story. Those people walking the pier has a story. Why stories matter? Because you just see people right now, you don't know what's going on. A lot of us, I know me, I'm just talking about me, start judging people right off the bat. Always hear that say, don't judge a book by its cover. But you immediately start judging, but you don't know their story. Lessons learned from people you've met. Like I say, you don't know them, but then you start talking to them, you start communicating, you start connecting, you learn about those individuals, their stories. Their stories matter. Importance of understanding others is like what I mentioned earlier. Do not judge book by its cover. Continue to ask questions, learn about them, their story. their why. So basically, you're building bridges through conversation. That's what we just covered. Creating a platform for voices to be heard. You hear that? Creating a platform for voices to be heard. That's the future vision of YOOS. That is our vision. That is Ely and Kenny's vision for YOOS. Every story begins with a why. With a why. If there's one thing I hope you take away from my story, it's this. Your beginning does not define your ending. Your struggles do not define your future. And your story matters. Thank you for spending time with me in this beautiful sunny weather in Seattle, Washington. Thank you. Remember, remember this, family. Your voice matters, your story matters, and your why matters. Until next time, this is Ely from YOOS.
Tales of the hustle, dreams come alive. Building the future, watch them strive. YOOS.